Paul, one of the greatest Christians to ever live, said, "I do that which I don't want to do, and I don't do that which I do want to do." If such a great Christian had a struggle to find victory, how is there hope for you and I? Many times, because we continue to fall, we run into discouragement. We see that there's no way out, and we accept the fact that there is no hope. Hi guys, welcome back to Learning to Abide. Last time we were looking at our great need of Christ. This time we are looking at the most important fact for helping us to have victory. We'll be looking at this in three ways. First, Jesus' life, ways that we can grow, and then lastly, what does the good word says and what are the promises that we can claim in our own life. This message is so important for us because if we don't take the Bible entirely, we can quickly fall into discouragement and even being lost. Let's first look at the life of Jesus. He went about preaching, teaching, and healing. He knew no sin, neither was there any guile found within him. When he was reviled, he reviled not against. When he was threatened, he threatened not. But he committed himself to him that judges rightly. We see that he learned to love his enemies. And in this time where there's so much strife and chaos in the world, we must learn of him. But how did Jesus obtain this love for his enemies? There's a part of Jesus' life that is even more powerful than that last one, and that is of his humanity. See, in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, it says that Jesus saw it not robbery to be equal with God, but took on the likeness of human flesh. What's that word likeness? We see in Genesis chapter 2 that God made Adam in his likeness. Adam was perfect. But we see that as time went on, human nature became sinful. And Jesus took on that likeness, a sinful nature. Yet, how did he not fall into sin? We see in John chapter 5, verses 19 and 31, that it was not him that was working, but the Father was working through him. We see that perfection is only possible as we direct our eyes 100% to Jesus' life. And we also know that we fall when we take our eyes off of Jesus. We just saw how Jesus had victory in his life, but how can you and I have that victory too? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 9. We see that it says here that Jesus came to break down the first covenant so that he could build up a second covenant. Well, what was the first covenant? Let's go to Exodus chapter 24 and verse 3. It says that it's a promise between the Israelites and God saying that I will follow all of your laws. But there's a problem, isn't there? We know as humans that's not possible to keep the law of God. So that's why Jesus had to come and he had to create a second covenant. And we find the second covenant in verse 19. And it says that if we open up the door of our hearts, Jesus will come and place his law in our hearts. He will place the desire to follow him in our own lives. We see that as we look at the cross and abide in him, he will change every aspect of our lives. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13 says that Jesus will make a way of escape for every single temptation that you and I face. I want to tell you a personal story. I was with a girl. I was much younger, and we were out in the woods in a secluded area. And before any sexual acts happening, because that was the idea in our minds, we got to a public path where there was a lot of traffic. And she said to me, "Benjamin, I don't want to go on that path. Let's turn around." And I knew what would happen if I went on that secluded path again. I saw that there was two paths. See, God will never leave you and I alone. But by ourselves, we are not strong enough to take that way of escape out. That is where the strength of God plays a part in your life and my life as we find victory. My brothers and sisters, we saw how Jesus had victory, and we saw that victory is also possible for us. What are the promises of God? Because we know that His word is sure and that it will hold up in the test of trial. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17 says that if we allow Him to work in us, that we will become a new creature. It says in Philippians that He will start to work within us so that we do His good pleasure. It says in Psalms 119 verse 9 that we can have victory as we study God's word. We see in John chapter 15 that as the disciples were perplexed that Jesus was going to be on the cross soon, Jesus said, if you abide in me and I in you, you shall bear forth much fruit. See, when we're with Jesus, life changes. 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 4 says that we can be divine partakers of His divine nature, having escaped lust and corruption and all that is in the world. If you're thinking that is impossible, Jeremiah 32 verse 27 says that, is there anything too hard for me, your creator? The one who created you is wanting to recreate you once again. We can try all we want, but it's only by His strength that we may be changed. Brothers and sisters, we've learned of Jesus' life and His humanity. He was our example, and we can follow in that example. We must take hold of the promises of God. Let them be the meditation of our thoughts. And as we look on the cross, my brothers and sisters, we will be changed because His word does not return void. Paul, in the end of his life, said in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 12, I have not reached perfection, but I continue to strive each and every day. My brothers and sisters, this is a battle of faith. If I believe God can change me, God can change me. And as I press towards the mark, press towards the finish line, He will continue to be the author and finisher of my faith. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe. Don't forget our social media pages as well. And next week, we get to look at the solution that God has given to us in His word. God bless.